It's week 14, and we're embarking one of the most crucial waiver wire periods of the season and quite possibly our fantasy football playing careers, because the waiver wire has been pretty dank throughout the year. And then all of a sudden, week 13, we get hit with injuries, and now we got to deal with those injuries with the waiver wire picking up these new prospects. We're going to go over 12 wide receivers who you can pick up off waivers right now to help impact your fantasy football team, to get you to the playoffs, to help build your rosters and everything else. But what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button, tap with the finger on your phone, click it with the mouse on your computer. You need to get the job done, because we're going over the waiver wire hot and heavy this week and every week. But we got to go extra heavy this week, because the waiver wire's got a lot of new names and a lot of new scenarios we got to cover. We're going to help you set your lineups this week, next week, and the rest of the season and next year as well. I'm a huge resource for your research. You need to hit that subscribe button so you stop missing out, so I can help you with your drafts next year too. Let's look at these wide receivers though. We got 12 of them today. Romeo Doubs is up. Jaden Reed should be rostered. If he's not, pick him up. Look at him as almost the same thing, because these wide receivers are a carousel. One usually hits, one's usually mid, and one's usually bust a mid when it comes to fantasy scoring each week. That's kind of a broader range of scenarios, but I think you get what I'm saying. In Dobbs' last 4 games, 5 targets, 14.3% target share, almost 75 air yards per game, so he's getting targeted deep downfield, 11.6 PPR points per game. Looking at the schedule, because we got to look at that now. We got the Giants in Tampa Bay and Carolina, Minnesota. All good matchups. All matchups you want to play with Romeo Doubs in your lineups with your other wide receivers to see what's happening. Yeah, that's a good thing to see. That's huge for him, Reed, Christian Watson, because these wide receivers are going to take their turns blowing up. You got the New York Giants game. I don't think I need to say more about that. Tampa Bay is a pass funnel. Carolina on the road. That's a game you're going to be interested in. And then Minnesota in the championship rounds here. You're going to want that. You're going to want that on your team. Look at Doubs on the waiver wire. Noah Brown, because we're going to have to pour some liquor out for Tank Dell right now. Noah Brown came back last week, coming back from injury. It was kind of slow. Tank Dell's out for the season. He's done. He's on IR. Brown was ripping hot in weeks 9 through 10. And then we look at the schedule. We got 2 pass funnel games against the Titans in weeks 15 and 17. And we know the Titans push the ball in the air. So the matchups may not matter. And it may actually help him, these tough matchups against these tough defenses, because of the progression funnel. Because Stroud's going to have to work through his reads. And those targets could go to Brown. Brown's an easy pickup here because you want Texans. Anybody who's on the field for the Texans can get it on any given Sunday. You need that on the back end of your roster. Elijah Moore, last 4 games, 8.8 targets per game, a 22.9% target share. That should not be on waivers. That should not. Any wide receiver seeing a 20% target share or higher and is sitting on waivers should not be on waivers, because he's getting enough share of the targets where he could go off on any given week. And then look at his scoring these last 2 weeks. Against Baltimore in week 10, 15.4 fantasy points. Against Pittsburgh in week 11, 12. We got a down game against Denver, but we picked back up against the Rams last week, 12.3. And he's good with the jabroni quarterbacks because they're targeting him. He's good at the lower A dots. He's good at the deeper A dots. He's getting targeted downfield. We saw that in week 13. But in the other games, he's getting a shorter depth of target as well. And looking at the schedule here, it's kind of up and down. It's really how you perceive it. But we got Houston week 16. That could be a fire game script. Jacksonville had some injuries come up. That could make his matchups interesting. We got Chicago, who's always in weird game scripts. Could be slow, could be fast. Jets in week 17. Who knows? But guess what? That's a revenge game in your championship rounds that you may want to look at for Elijah Moore. But Rashid Shaheed is eventually going to come back. Michael Thomas out. It's airyard city with this guy, whether Thomas is in or out of the lineup. And that being said, he's always going to be a lottery ticket. We got Carolina in week 14. We got the Giants. Week 17, look at that matchup. You got the ultimate pass funnel game. He should be back by week 17. That being said, week 17, you're going to want to use him there, possibly as a lottery ticket. That's where he's going to be the ultimate lottery ticket because Tampa Bay likes to give up those deep passes. Rashid Shaheed's going to have a favorable matchup there, and that's a pass funnel matchup you really want to look at for a player like Rashid Shaheed. Demario Douglas, 9 targets a game, 29.5% target share before the concussion, 5.2 ADOT. So he's a little bit up and down, but good enough to get you by. Right now, he's still out with a concussion, but you need to pay attention to him because you can't leave this target share on the waiver wire because he can get it on any given week, and usually he's good enough to get you by. All the way back to week 7. Week 7 against Buffalo, 11.4 PPR fantasy points. Week 8 against Miami, 7.9. Week 9, 10. Week 10, 10. Week 11, bye. Against the Giants, 10. So good enough to get you by due to the short targets, but he's getting so many targets that he's consistent, he's safe, and if you need that, then you may want to pursue that. We got Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Denver, Buffalo. Decent game scripts going forward, even with the wonky quarterback play. You know what? Targets are targets, and sometimes that's what you got to chase. Jonathan Mingo's been running hot right now. Last 4 games, he's seen a 7.3 targets per game and a 26.4% target share. You can't leave that on waivers. You just can't. The problem is he plays for Carolina. The quarterback position's not too great, but he is seeing 70.3 air yards per game. He's getting targeted deep downfield. It's hard to trust. His last 2 weeks he hit, though. Against Tennessee, 10 fantasy points. Against Tampa Bay, 12.9. We're seeing the rookie emerge over the back part of the season. Even if you don't pick him up right now, lock that away in your brain for next year for your drafts, because I'm going to be telling you about it. Click that subscribe button right now so you'll remember to pick up Jonathan Mingo in round 13 of next year's draft so you're good to go with an upside play. Look at the schedule here. We got Atlanta, slower game script. Green Bay, maybe a slower game script. New Orleans in week 14. Jacksonville, week 17. Who knows what that game script's going to be, because we got some big changes going on with Jacksonville ever since last night. But he's seeing targets, and sometimes you got to chase the targets. Targets can lead to fantasy production, and if you're not getting targeted as a wide receiver, guess what? You're not scoring fantasy points. So targets are very vital. 7.3 a game's pretty solid. Parker Washington. I'm not going to put this video out and not talk about Parker Washington. Of course, he went off last night. 18.1 PPR fantasy points. Caught all 6 of his targets. Scored a touchdown. Talk of the town. And I'm the guy to talk about him because I talk about these rookies nonstop in the offseason. I talk about these players throughout their collegiate career. What I can tell you about him, he's very good in the slot. Very good ball skills. Very sticky hands. Christian Kirk out with surgery. He's going to be very dependable for this team as a wide receiver. We got some trickiness here at the quarterback position. We're going to have to pay attention to that going forward. And the matchups coming up, Browns, Baltimore. That's a little bit scary here. But after that, Tampa Bay and Carolina. Tampa Bay, a pass funnel defense. This team is still in it to win it, and they may be cooking it to Washington a little bit more. He might be one of those rookies that'll come out late in the season and say, here I am a key contributor. A guy you want to look at, a guy you want to pay attention to. I would not be surprised if he does well this season and plays well for the rest of the year. We talked about him a lot, extensively in the offseason. Another reason why you need to click subscribe here and just watch me intermittently in February, January, March, April, as we talk about these rookies. That way, when Parker Washington hits, you see the rookie rankings, you see the profiles, you hear the information, you know a little bit about him. And then when I'm talking offhand, I do a you need video. You know where I'm coming from. You know what I'm going to say before I say it. Odell Beckham. 4.7 targets per game, 18.4% target share, last 4 games, but 15.5 average depth of target. He's getting targets deep downfield, and that's allowing him to be successful here in fantasy football. 11 points per game. And looking at the scoring here, week 9, 14.6 PPR fantasy points against Seattle. Against the Browns, 11. Against the Bengals, 15.6. Down game against the Chargers, But that was a down game for everybody in that matchup in general. Then we hit the bye week. They have to be on note that Odell Beckham's heating up downfield, and they're probably going to use that going forward. Something to pay attention to. Almost a 20% target share here at 18.4%. A wide receiver you want to look at later on down the road. The matchups here are a little bit up and down. You see the Niners there, but look at week 17. We got the Dolphins. Wide receivers hit against the Dolphins because the Dolphins push the pace. However, this is against the Ravens defense, but we're looking at this matchup because that's a key matchup in week 17 that you can start a lot of players in that could go ham for us in fantasy. Curtis Samuel, last 4 games, 6.3 targets per game, 16.7% target share, only 8 fantasy points, but he can get you splash weeks. There are some games where it's very low and some games where it's very high. It's got a bye week this week, so you might be on waivers and you might be able to catch him next week. That's the thing. We also have the Niners and the Jets on the back end. You may want to stay away from that, but again, he's also a lottery ticket type wide receiver due to his 4.3 speed. If he gets the ball with Green in front of him, guess what? Big gain. If he gets 2 of those, guess what? You're having a big gain in your lineup. And guess what? That might help you win your week. Now we're looking at Jameson Williams. We don't really need to get into the stats. I think we really know about him. He's a lottery ticket. I don't think the matchups matter here for him because he's deep ball city. He has to bring in 1 or 2 deep balls a game, maybe cash in the end zone for you to be fantasy relevant with this player. And really depends on where you're at in your lineup, where you're at in your roster, how bad you're hurting, whether or not you need Jameson Williams going forward. And you may want to play the matchups with him or you may want to just ignore him. Jalin Hyatt, same situation, but a little bit more consistent, plus a rookie on the upswing. Last 3 games, 3 targets a game. That sounds horrible, right? But 70.7 air yards per game. Before that, he was pushing around the 80s. So this guy's getting targets downfield. He's getting a little bit of volume, and he's getting opportunities with Danny DeVito there at quarterback. That being said, week 14, we got the Packers, Saints, Philly in week 16. You may want him in that matchup there because wide receivers hit against the Eagles. You also got the Rams there week 17. Anything can happen in that matchup. But again, we're looking at a rookie wide receiver here that's heating up. That could splash on the back end of the season. We don't know for sure, but we have an indicator here with the air yards in recent production. And now Kahlil Shakur. Same reason, lottery ticket, up and down is the Kahlil Shakur roller coaster, and this explains why. Week 7, 7.5 fantasy points. Week 8, Tampa Bay, 15.2. Week 9, 9 spot. Week 10, 3 spot. Week 11, 20 spot. Week 12, 7 spot. So about 1 out of every 5 games, 2 out of like 6 or whatever, you're hitting with Kahlil Shakur. He's a lottery ticket wide receiver. Don't really look into the numbers too bad. If you're hurting at wide receiver and you need to throw a lottery ticket in your lineup, he could be a guy. You just put him in your lineup and you hope you hit that 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 chance game where he goes off. More than likely you bust, but you know what you're getting into. But those wide receivers do serve a purpose in fantasy, and you need to know that going forward for now, for 2024, 2025, 2026, because it's a strategy of how to play the game. But those are 12 wide receivers we're looking at this week off the waiver wire. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Who are you picking up? Where are you at in the playoff picture? Drop it down there. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Ric Flair's watching you. Do not disappoint him. It's the holidays. I want to thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.